Migraines and menopause, the silent struggle reveals. So welcome to Menopause Monday, where I share a video with you every single Monday at 10 a.m. UK time on my YouTube channel. And today I'm talking about migraines. I've been asked about it quite often. I've heard various stories from ladies and younger people too, also, that have had these really weird experiences. Not that you would necessarily call a migraine, but actually when you look at the diagnostics of what it means to have a migraine, it actually falls within that banner. So today I'm going to talk about migraines, migraine and birth control pills, migraines and possible HRT, and why it's really important for you to understand the difference between a migraine and a headache, because there are various diagnostic criteria. And also the fact that if you struggle with migraines, they can have such a profound impact on you. You know, some people at the sort of extremities of it have to be in a dark room for 2 to 3 days. You might vomit, you might not be able to, you might be seeing auras, you might be overly stimulated, you might have to just be in a very quiet, darkened room in order for you to actually get through that period of migraine. And I think it's a bit like cold and flu. So many people say, oh, I've got the flu. Just like, no, you've not. You've got a cold. If you've had the flu, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The flu is entirely different. You're bedridden. It can take forever to get over and you feel absolutely vile. Yes, you can feel pretty ropey with a cold, but it's a completely different classification. Same with a migraine. A lot of people band it around, oh, I've got a migraine. And it's not. It's just a headache. It's just a thumping head. And while I say just a thumping head, I know some headaches are horrible. I had a terrible one yesterday. It definitely was not a migraine, although it was unilateral. I'll go into the details of that in a minute. But there are certain criteria that it needs to fulfill in order to be categorized as a migraine. And I hope to sort of expand a bit more on that. So just before I sort of dive into the sort of the mechanics of it and the importance of you understanding what migraines are, migraines tend to affect the population of women sort of age between 30 and 30, actually sort of 35 up to about 40. So out of the population, 1 in 3 women will struggle with migraines. I mean, that is a huge percentage of people. And also not just the knock-on effect to you, but your family, your career, the socio-economic effect of migraine. So I think it's really important that we take it very, very seriously, because they are no fun. And I think the more we can talk about these sorts of things, the more maybe exposure it will get, because there's a lot of typically it's a lot of inconclusive stuff. Studies suggest, but there is no absolute definitive proof that doing something specific is necessarily going to help you or not help you. So I've sort of been researching and gathering various bits of evidence, which I hope are gonna help you understand if you're having a migraine, and also how to prevent them, and also take into account, various factors that might be increasing your risk of developing migraines. How do we actually define what a migraine is? Generally, it includes a headache, but not always. And there are 2 different classifications. So a migraine without aura is essentially a prolonged bad headache, normally unilateral. So in one area of your head, it has tends to have a pulsating quality. It doesn't always have to be pulsating either. You can have, some people describe it as like a band tightly across their head. Particularly if you have the aura type migraine, that would still classify as a migraine. And it also has a negative impact on you just managing daily behaviors. So, walking or just going about your normal everyday life, if it's having a negative impact on that, and it's a moderate to severe level of pain, that would diagnose you as having a migraine. A migraine with aura is it can be very frightening, because it doesn't have to include a headache. Aura it's normally a visual, so you might be getting sort of broken lights around your eyes. You might be looking at something and then you almost like have vision blindness, so you might be able to see some words, if you're writing, for instance, and then all of a sudden that the words then become invisible. That's quite frightening, isn't it? It can also be associated with one area of numbness on your body, normally in the shoulder or the arm. Again, pretty scary. And it also interferes with, has a negative impact on you managing your everyday life. So that is migraine with an aura. It can be visual, which is the most common version, and it can be sensory or auditory. So sensory is you get the pins and needles, or you get the numbing sensation down one part of your body, and then auditory is obviously just a sensitivity to sound. But you can have a migraine with the aura and not actually have a headache. So you might be thinking, oh my God, what's happening? Am I having a stroke? And you're not, but it is definitely worth getting it checked out. If it's happened to you and it's frightened you and you've thought, oh, crikey, it could just be a migraine. Now, I say just a migraine, but I think we'd rather have a migraine than a stroke. There are various lifestyle factors that tie into this. So I know some people who are on birth control pills and it has triggered just horrible migraines. They've had to go into a darkened room. They've had to lie there for sort of 1-2 days. They've been vomiting. Essentially, they are no fun. And it's really important that you understand that lifestyle factors can have a really big impact on them. If you're not sleeping enough, if you're going out a lot, if you're under a lot of stress, that can all trigger a migraine. So you might be the sort of person who, when you have a generally normal, healthy lifestyle, you would never have a migraine. But with cumulative stress, with cumulative lack of sleep, with cumulative perhaps drinking more alcohol than you should and not eating the right kinds of foods often enough, that can also trigger a migraine. So just be aware of that. There's a lot of control that you have. And it sort of boils down to the commonsensical things. It's just like, look after yourself, and the chances are your risk of having a migraine is going to be seriously reduced. If you may have a genetic predisposition to migraines, and some women are really afraid if they've had the migraines brought on by birth control pills, that if they take HRT, that it might then trigger the migraines too. There is no evidence to prove that one way or the other. I spent quite a lot of time researching that, because I wanted to be able to give you a definitive answer, and unfortunately there isn't. I think the thing to recommend is if you had migraines that were brought on by using the birth control pill, but you need HRT, it's definitely worth having that conversation with your healthcare provider. There's also been studies with just estrogen only, and then the estrogen plus progesterone type of HRT. And again, it wouldn't suggest that one is better than the other or one is worse than the other. So it might be one of those things of suck it and see. I know definitely they recommend the gels or the creams are better if you have a predisposition to migraines, because it goes into your bloodstream much more gently than if it's a pill and all of a sudden it starts to sort of dissolve, and it's, there's a lot of hormone there packed in, whereas as a cream or a gel, it's going to take longer to get into your bloodstream. So that is one thing that I have seen recommended. If you do struggle with migraines, make sure that you're, and you're taking HRT, make sure that you're using the gels or the creams rather than a pill. I don't know about you, but I love understanding why these things happen, and the auras for me have always been like highly fascinating. So I'm just going to briefly describe the biomechanics as well as I can as to why you might be getting the auras, because I think they're one of those things that, because they're not necessarily associated with the headache that comes with a migraine, they can be a very disconcerting element of having a migraine. Leading theories in explaining auras in migraine is called cortical spreading depression. So essentially, this involves a wave of electrical and chemical changes going across the cortex of the brain. So the cortex is the outer layer of the brain. And it's thought that this is fundamental in triggering the auras. Scientists think that the aura is caused by an electrical impulse that isn't properly balanced within the brain that can trigger these auras. And this can affect the way the neurons fire and communicate with each other. Essentially, it's kind of a miscommunication of electrical impulses that are going around the brain. It's known as a depolarization. And while this depolarization is happening, it can also affect how the blood vessels constrict and dilate. So first of all, there's a constriction of blood vessels. That's called vasoconstriction, blood vessels, and that can decrease the blood flow to certain areas of the brain. And this is often called the aura phase. And then after the constriction, there's often a period of dilation. So the blood vessels get larger, and that can lead to the development of the aura symptoms. Also, if your brain is not getting an adequate supply of blood flow, then that is necessarily, if you kneel down on your legs and you sit there for too long, you get pins and needles. Well, that's because of restricted blood flow. So because it's happening in the brain, that is what can give you the sort of the various strange lights at the periphery of your vision, and obviously the tingling in often upper extremities and your fingers, etc. Eventually these symptoms do go, and they can be followed by a headache, but not always. So what is the relationship between menopause and migraines? Essentially, it's down to the falling estrogen again. Estrogen can have a pain reducing effect in the body, and it also makes our blood vessels constrict and dilate. So oftentimes when our estrogen levels are fluctuating, particularly in perimenopause, which is, there's a higher incidence of women during the perimenopausal years that display migraine symptoms. That is obviously down to the fact that the blood vessels are constricting and dilating, plus your perception of pain may be increased, combined with the fact that you're probably not sleeping properly. If you're not sleeping properly, you're probably grabbing for the fast carbs, which are then having a stressor effect in your body as well. So it's like all things with the menopause, it's just one piece of a jigsaw puzzle, and we need lots of other little pieces to fit together nicely in order to really significantly impact our symptoms. Again, it really nearly always falls down to self-care and management. So manage your sleep, eat healthily, reduce the amount of alcohol you're drinking, try and keep your caffeine levels low, and understand that while migraines occur, there are a lot of things that you can do to help reduce the impact of those migraines, not ignoring them either, because if you are predisposed to migraines and you get them regardless of your lifestyle changes, which does happen to some people, there is no shame in having to go to bed because you've got a migraine and you're feeling nauseous, or you're vomiting, or you're sort of sensorily overloaded. And we have this stigma. It's just like, oh, she's got a headache. No, a migraine is really serious. The implications for you and the knock-on effect to your family, if you've got children that rely upon you, if you've got people that you're caring for, work, etc., it's really tough, because I think we all think, oh God, they're going to be tired of me phoning in again. Some women have 15 migraines a month. Surely we should not, given the technological developments that we have, surely women should not be having to have 15 migraines a month. That is just, it's not sustainable. In fact, if you struggle with migraines, I'd be really interested if you'd comment below to sort of share what you find might help you, because there's a lot of over-the-counter drugs that you can take. There's prescribed drugs that you can be given in order to help with your migraines. So it'd be really interesting to hear what has worked for you, and how you manage, because I think if you don't struggle with migraines, I don't think I've ever had a migraine. I've had some serious headaches, but I would not necessarily call that a migraine. And normally those headaches have been brought on by myself, or recently my dogs were really, really poorly. I've slept really badly. I've been under a lot of stress because I've been trying to keep them alive, and emotional and physical stress because I've just not been sleeping properly. It's been a round the clock job for several days. And the stress of that combined made yesterday, I just had this, I felt like my head was going to split open. Now, whether you'd call that a migraine or not, I don't know, but it was definitely brought on by lifestyle factors, not hormonal imbalances. And when you can be aware of that, one thing I would suggest you do, even if you get like serious headaches, is keep a tracker, keep a journal of when you have your serious headaches, when you have a migraine, and really think, what did you eat and drink before it happened? What has your lifestyle been like? What has your sleep been like? Have you been under a particular amount of stress? Because when you keep a tracker, have you had artificial sweeteners? They are terrible at triggering things like joint pain and migraine. I rarely ever eat, well, I don't think I ever normally eat an artificial sweetener, but I had a Smint in my car a few months ago. And I'd been driving a long way, and I just felt like something just to freshen up my mouth. I was thirsty, and it was just like I hadn't come out very well prepared. So I had a Smint. Literally within about a few minutes, my knees were aching, my ankles got like these funny nervy feelings going through them. And it's the only thing I can think of was it's the smint and the artificial sweeteners in the smint. So be very mindful of that. I think a lot of people think, oh, you know, those little things you stick in your coffee or your tea, they're not good for you. You'd be better off with raw honey or just raw sugar and just have a small amount of it. So be very mindful of that as well, because it might be that those are having a negative impact to your migraines. There's not much written about it unless you actually go and look for it. Once you start to look for it, it's actually quite astounding. It beggars belief that artificial sweeteners are still out there. I've read some people have said, well, it just helps people who need to lose a lot of weight to reduce the amount of sugar they're eating. It has chemical imbalances. The artificial sweetener is not the problem. Go for the raw honey or the raw sugar if you absolutely need a sweetener. Just wean yourself off. Yes, it might taste a bit funky for a couple of weeks. You'll soon get used to it. It's amazing how your taste buds will change. And then all of a sudden you don't need those sweet things. So just be really mindful of that, because they can have a negative impact on your migraines. So that's why it's so important to have an individualized approach to your journey through the menopause. HRT might suit you, and it might help you reduce your severity and frequency of migraines. It might make migraine risk worse for you. So again, it's completely individual, but I think the one thing that you really can take from this is lifestyle factors will have a massively positive impact on you if you look after yourself. And just to become very aware of what you're doing by using a tracker or a journal. My little dogs are feeling much healthier now, thank you. And just being really mindful of what you're eating, and things like, you know, not too much alcohol, not too much caffeine. Are you taking artificial sweeteners? Cut them out and see if it has a positive impact on your migraines. Just be mindful of when you take control over your symptoms and how you journey through the menopause. It's really empowering because it gives you a sense of ownership over what's happening to you. It's very easy for these issues to become medicalized, and you talk to your doctor about it, and all of a sudden your doctor is in control of your health. And I think that's a really disempowering way to be. I think when we can understand what the mechanics within reason of what's going on and the things that might be triggering us that create or increase our risk of migraines in menopause, it enables you to ask more questions when you're in the surgery with your healthcare provider. And if you're asking a lot of questions, they've got to answer them. And if they can't answer them, they need to find the answers for you. So educate yourself as much as you can. It is quite that, like I said at the beginning, there is not very much conclusive evidence. And so really, if you can use yourself as the guinea pig, be the test dummy, and keep a track of what is happening in your life before a migraine happens, particularly if you have like the odd random migraine. If you have frequent migraines, make sure you talk to your healthcare provider. You should not be having to struggle along 10 to 15 migraines a month. That is just crazy. And be your own best health advocate. Make sure that you're doing the things that you know are going to provide a holistic, strong foundation for you to live a healthy and energized and ultimately happy and fulfilling life through menopause and beyond. So I hope that's been helpful. I really appreciate your company. I'd be so interested. Drop your comments of anything you want to share about your migraines. If you've had them, what helps you. It will help other women who are watching this. If you know of somebody who has migraines, please share this with them if you think it might be helpful for them. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't done already, so that you don't miss future episodes. And you can actually click the bell icon, and then that will give you notifications when I've released a new video. But it's 10 a.m. every Monday UK time. So thank you so much for your company. I hope it's been helpful, and I look forward to chatting to you soon.